How you doing, folks? Well, it's Beetle tinkering day again today, and today I'm going to try and tackle a lot of those small, niggly little jobs rather than one big job. So that'll involve doing things like putting on the exhaust, changing out fuel lines, putting in the fuel pump, sorting out wiring issues, this, that and the other. And to be honest with you, I'm going to figure it out as I go. So I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to get done in this video, so work with me here. Okay, so what I'm going to start by doing is fitting the exhaust, hopefully. I have my doubts that it's going to go straight forward because what came off it isn't what's going back onto it. I have a set of stainless steel J-tubes to replace the heat exchangers to allow for better flow of gases from the engine, from the two front cylinders. So that in itself is going to mean that we need to adapt the exhaust a little bit. So let's have a look at the exhaust for a second. So this is the exhaust. It is a vintage speed unit. It's looking a little bit worse for wear, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean it up and get it looking a bit better. The tailpipes are looking all right, but the rest of it is looking a little bit crusty. It is actually stainless, it's just stained. So I also, when I bought the J-tubes, I got these adapters. So I've got these here, and I also got these here. So I don't see how I could use all four of them, but maybe that is what I have to do. So it could be a case where I need to, well no, they'd be on this pipe, these pipes here, wouldn't they? Yeah, so they'd be on these ones here, not these ones here. So yeah, we'll figure that out as we go. You can see there's a stud damaged there, so I'm gonna have to try and do something about that as well. So unfortunately I cannot weld stainless steel, so that in itself is going to be a bit of a headache. So let's see if we can sort that out first. Alright, so I was actually able to clean up that stud reasonably well, and I just ran a dye down it just to clean the threads, and the nut is holding on it. And you know yourself, if I try and take that out, you know how that plays out. So if I try and take it out and it breaks, then that's my whole morning gone trying to faff around with one stud when I have a whole car to build. So no, I'm not going to try and do that. So I'm leaving that as it is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just hang the exhaust off the car, and I'm going to try and figure out these J-tubes and figure out what way they go on. There's no gaskets on anything yet because I'm going to be taking it back off again. So just in case anybody has spotted that omission. Okay, so I'm approaching this the wrong way. What I need to do is I need to loosen off the J-tubes so that they're free to move around a little bit, and then I can get the exhaust on. I can tighten them back up again then when they're in position, because they don't line up at all, as is standard in these type of situations. Alright, so I loosened the downpipe on the left side. That should allow me to line things up a little bit better. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put a couple of nuts on the studs on the heads just to keep everything in place there now. And then we're going to just do a trial fitment. And when I know everything is right, then I'll clean up all the flanges, put the gaskets on and send it home. But I think I'm a long way away from doing that just yet. Okay, so the exhaust is now on. It's a seriously boring job to watch somebody else doing, so I didn't even bother kind of getting into the sort of the finer details on how I did it. Essentially what I did was I made sure every union on the exhaust was loose, but that all the fasteners were there and just waiting to be tightened up. So what I did was I went around from here down to here, onto the other end of the J-tubes and onto there. And the issue I was having with the J-tubes actually not lining up was because I was using the left hand flange adapter on the right hand side and vice versa. So it was my own silly fault. So yeah, pretty straightforward stuff to sort out in the end, and it's now on. The only thing that's kind of annoying me is the fact that tailpipe is touching the valance. Now, to be honest with you, I'm a little bit reticent to do anything about that at this point in time. I think I'll probably just leave it be for the moment. I will sort it out, but there are other issues to contend with first of all. The next thing I'm going to do is a little bit of cleaner work. I'm going to sort out the electrical wiring in the car that leads down to the engine, because there are two power supplies that are not there. One is the supply to the alternator, and basically the supply that excites the field windings in the alternator, and the other is the supply to the coil. So what I had to do when I ran the engine last time is I had to use a jumper wire from the B terminal on the alternator, which does have power on it, and supply power to the coil and a fuel pump in the engine bay. And then I'll worry about fuel lines as well. I bought new fuel pipes as well. The ones I'd put in before were just temporary. They were serviceable, but you know, I mean, I will be replacing them anyway. And it's out with the wiring diagram. I'm kind of weird insofar as I actually enjoy this end of things, to tell you the truth. There's probably some of you saying that it's not the only reason I'm weird, but that's probably a reasonable comment to make at this point in time. Anyway, right, so fuse on the fuse panel, we have fuse number 12 here, okay, and we have a black wire going all the way from here, there, 2.5 gauge wire that goes down to the ignition coil. So we should have a black wire going there, coming from the fuse panel at position number 12, and then there's a bridge that goes between position number 11 and 12. Now, the thing I have noticed here is that fuse number 12, the other side of that, supplies the emergency flashers, which are actually working, and they also go down to the oil pressure warning light and the basically the positive supply for the speedometer. So yeah, if they're working, that means that there is supply going to that fuse, but there's nothing coming from the top side of it. It's actually an unfused supply. Okay, so looking at the back of the fuse panel, I'm seeing here that there is actually nothing on the terminal for fuse 12, but there is a black wire going onto fuse number 11, which is essentially the same thing, because if you look down there, you'll see that fuses number 11 and 12 are actually joined. But yeah, so we need to find out what is going on there. Alright, so what I'm going to start by doing is I'm going to start by probing things and finding out if we actually have power there at fuse number 12. And if we do, which we should, yeah, we do. Okay, so that is, and we have fuse power at both the outs on fuse number 11 and the ins on fuse number 12. Okay, so that's first question answered, right? So we have power to where it should be at that point, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to double check, make sure that whatever the issue is hasn't come good. So I'm actually going to just double check at the coil and make sure we don't actually now have power there, because if we do, there's no point in going any further. Well, we have an intermittent fault which we will have to track down. Next thing I'm going to do is there is no power there, by the way. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this wire off here, okay? And I'm going to put the one end of my meter here, and I'm going to check for continuity between here and there's another black wire under the back seat. So there's continuity there between the two. Simple enough, folks. There was a wire off the fuse board, so that's all sorted now. So we have power to the coil, which is great. So yeah, anyway, so now I have the exhaust on, I have power to the coil. The engine should start on the key, aside from the fact that there isn't a fuel pump or fuel system. But I have my trusty petrol can installed because I want to make sure that the exhaust is all sorted properly, and I want to hear it with the exhaust on as well, to tell you the truth. So let's get it fired up. Okay, so things are jerry-rigged into place and everything there, so we should be good to go for a start. So let's have a go and see. We'll just turn on the fuel pump. Is working there now, so that'll supply fuel to the carbs. Only a little bit of petrol in the tank. Should be enough just to get a start out of it. Okay, so should be good there now. So let's pump the accelerator a couple of times. The linkage is sticky. It's another thing I need to look at, so I'm going to do it from in here. Alright. So now let's see what happens. Come on. I nearly had it. be alright. It's not firing on 4 cylinders. You know what? These Weber carbs are great in many ways, but they get blocked very easily. It's picking up all right, so it's clearly working on the mains. It's just an idle jet. We can look at that at a later stage, but anyway. Sounded pretty good, and it's amazing how quickly it's picking up. Like it's much more revvy than it was before I got the work done on it. Of course, maybe part of the reason it sounded like this is because of the fact that the camshaft is a bit more aggressive than the last one I had in. I did change the cam. Well, I didn't do it. I got somebody to do it. Okay, let's kill it now. Playtime's over. We've enough to be doing. So, yeah, I'm happy with that anyway. So that's great. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look at the steering, because I actually got another steering column which I can retrieve the bearing out of. Okay, so here's the 2 steering columns I have. The shaft is in here, so I need to take that out first of all. So that just pops out there. So we'll be using that. And this is actually the steering column out of my car, so I want to use this one rather than having to go down the route of changing all of its over onto this one. May as well just use this one. But that means I need to retrieve this bearing in here. Now, this is going to sound so stupid, but this bearing cannot be got. It is unobtainium. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to gingerly try and remove this bearing from this column without breaking it, and I'm going to fit it into the other one, and then that'll do us. So I will obviously clean it up before I fit it, but let's see how I can get this out anyway. Alright, so I have the bearing all cleaned up and re-greased. I got it out by just using the shaft off the using the steering shaft and just tapping it out, and came out in one piece, so happy days. So that's it pressed in there, and I just give that a little bit of a clean. Actually, it's just a rubber boot that goes down over it, so I'll give that a little wipe and fit that, and then that should be good to go. Okay, and then this just pops on here like so. My car never actually had that before, so there we go. And you have this yoke here as well, which is not entirely sure what it's for, but anyway, it'll be there as well. So yeah, next thing to do is we need to fit our steering shaft inside that. I'm sure, just thinking about it, that I probably would have had to fit the steering shaft before the bearing, but we'll figure it out and go from there. Okay, I think that's spot on now. I actually didn't have to take out that bearing. What I did was I took out this bearing up here. There is another bearing which I had replaced in the past. It's just held in with a circlip. Pulled it out, pushed it onto the shaft, put the shaft in through, and then put the circlip back in. You can see the steering lock is working and everything there now, so that's grand. And I removed some of the paint off it. Honest to God, why there's any paint on it at all, I don't know, but there we go. So, right, that's ready to fit to the car. I might just tidy that up as well. Alright, just for the avoidance of any doubt, that's good enough now. Right, let's have a look at fitting it into the car. First thing we need to do, take out the fuel tank. Okay, so here's under the fuel tank, and this is the UJ that we need to put our steering shaft onto. Now I have a bolt there for it to go through, but the first thing I need to do is I need to put the steering column in, and then we'll attach that. The rubber boot that I was wondering what it did covers the hole down the dashboard underneath the steering column, so it was worth cleaning because you can actually see it. Okay, so I'll freely admit that this is definitely not my most exciting video. I actually did get quite a bit done today, to be honest with you, but it was a lot of boring stuff, and my camera battery died, and I was just thinking to myself, there's a lot of stuff here that just does not make good viewing, but I'll show you what I did anyway. Okay, so where I wrapped up with you was the steering column installation. So I now have steering, which is brilliant. So that's another subsystem installed into the car, which is nice. In addition to that though, what I did was I did a little bit of wiring. So if I turn on the ignition, well, I don't even need to turn on the ignition for this bit. So there's the hazard light switch on, and you can see hazard lights in the front of the car are flashing away merrily. Yes, I know they're white, they're the only bulbs I had. I will change them for orange bulbs at some stage. In addition to that though, what I also did was I sorted out the headlights.
See? That's the lights!
Yeah. So turn that off and turn this on. Now, given the fact that the ignition is now on, you can see we now have headlights, which is nice. So that's another victory. What I had to do there was I actually had to replace the connector for the headlight bulb on this side and do a little bit of rewiring and install earth points. Now for the earth points, I didn't want to go indiscriminately drilling holes for the body through the bodywork for earths, so I picked up on one of the bolts that's coming through to hold the wings onto the inner wing, and I used just a little piece of galvaband there and a smaller nut and bolt, and that has allowed me to earth there without actually drilling any holes. Now I will tidy up that wiring. I know it's not ideal as it is, but I did the same on this side as well, so no drilled holes needed. So under the fuel tank, the other thing I did then is I have fuel pipe routed up as far as here. Now that piece of fuel pipe will be replaced, but there is a polyurethane pipe that goes down through the centre of the chassis. The copper pipe that used to go down through there is long since broken. Actually, I think it was steel, in fact. So it was replaced with a piece of plastic piping, which is fine. It's working well. And when we go looking underneath the car, you will see that the bolts with the eccentric washers on the lower control arm, there we are, have also been replaced. Now I wanted to replace them because the old ones, it's like a D-shaped bolt, and the washer has got a flat in the hole, and some idiot rounded out that hole, so the washer wasn't locked to the position of the bolt the way it should be. So now it is, and yeah, so that gives me a little bit more peace of mind. At least that's done. I have new bolts on both sides, so that's another little victory. So where does that leave us? Well, the next job to do is to tackle what's going on under the bonnet. So I want to put a complete fuel system in. So I'm starting at the fuel tank, make sure the fuel tank is installed properly, install the install all the pipe work, install the fuel pump, which is in under the bonnet, and I also want to install the vacuum pump for the servo. I want to install the servo itself. I'm going to put that in the left hand inner wing, and route some brake pipes and install the brake master cylinder, which isn't installed. The only brakes that this car has at the moment is the parking brake, so that's not much use. So there is a bit of work involved in putting the brake system in. But up to this point we now have engine, gearbox, suspension, steering, and we're getting there with the electrics, and that'll be just a kind of a job I'll chip away at as we go. But the other thing I want to do is I want to install the rear light clusters as well, because at least that way then we have a full complement of lights, and when we have the fuel system installed then the engine will start on the key, which is also a nice little bonus. So as I said, it wasn't going to be a very exciting video, so I just said I'd wrap it up here with a quick kind of walkthrough of what I've accomplished, and we'll leave it there. So thanks for watching, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll keep you updated with my progress, and there is some more interesting stuff to come in the not too distant future, including a few tasks I want to do on the MGB that I'm restoring. So I will chat to you soon.